Welcome back, folks, to the WP-Tonic show this week in WordPress and SaaS. It's episode 912. We've got a returning guest, a friend of the show, somebody that always produces interesting stuff about the WordPress space. We've got Matt Medeiros from the podcast WP Minute and from Gravity Forms. In this show, we're going to be discussing all things WordPress, Gutenberg, the recent sale of XSLA, also about web standards. It's going to be a sweeping conversation. It should be really great fun. So, Matt, well, fun for me. Matt, would you like to do a quick intro to the new listeners and viewers?
Thanks for having me, Jonathan. Fantastic intro, of course, as always. Matt Medeiros from the WP Minute and from Gravity Forms, where I host the Breakdown podcast. It's all about Gravity Forms behind the scenes at Gravity Forms. So you can find me there as well, gravityforms.com/breakdown. But happy to talk about all things WordPress today.
That's great. And I've got my co-host, Kurt. Kurt, would you like to quickly introduce yourself?
Sure thing. Kurt Von Annen. I own Mañana No Mas, an agency that does primarily membership and learning websites. And I also work directly with Lifter LMS and Jonathan over at WP-Tonic.
That's fantastic. And before we go into the meat and potatoes of this great discussion, I've got a couple of messages from our major sponsors. We will be back in a few moments, folks.
This podcast episode is brought to you by Lifter LMS, the leading learning management system solution for WordPress. If you or your client are creating any kind of online course, training-based membership website, or any type of e-learning project, Lifter LMS is the most secure, stable, well-supported solution on the market. Go to lifterlms.com and save 20% at checkout with coupon code podcast20. That's podcast20. Enjoy the rest of your show.
We're coming back, folks. Also like to point out we've got some great special offers from the major sponsors, plus a curated list of the best WordPress plugins that we utilize ourselves at WP-Tonic and services. It's a great list. It will save you bags of time scrolling the internet, trying to find the right plugin for your client project. You can find all these goodies by going over to wp-tonic.com/deals, wp-tonic.com/deals. What more could you ask for?
A lot more, but that's all you're going to get from that page.
That's all you're going to get from me, folks. That's all you're going to get from me. I
always wanted to read that hook as a sponsored ad. Like every time you read it, I'm always like, either I'm driving or cleaning the dishes, cleaning the house, and I always love that hook in the sponsor read. Good
it's
job.
Very me, isn't it? It's very English, isn't it? Mm-hmm. It's very English, isn't it? I've been in America for almost 18 years, but I'll always be English. So let's switch off let's attempt to be professional in this podcast and switch off my email. So this goes straight into it. Where do you think WordPress, only a sweeping question, but I think it's a good start. Where do you think we are in the beginning of the second quarter in the world of WordPress? Can you be optimistic, pessimistic? Where are we in general with WordPress and Gutenberg?
Yeah, I mean, I'm largely optimistic these days. It's an intentional trait as I get older to stop trying to be so pessimistic about everything.
Just be pessimistic.
I mean, just because when I look at, I wrote about this in the other world that I love so much, which is podcasting. I wrote about this yesterday about in the world of podcasting and audio, and I'm going to draw parallels to WordPress, is a lot of folks are saying, oh, YouTube is the next savior of podcasting because now YouTube is getting back into the game of podcasting, which is crazy to say in 2024. So there's loads of people in the industry, largely the folks who are ad networks, big production houses, all turning to YouTube because they're following the money. And they're going, well, damn, this podcasting audio stuff is hard to make money. Let's just go to YouTube because now they're supporting RSS and audio. So this is the next thing for podcasting, surely. But it isn't, because Google hates RSS. They've killed 3 major products that support RSS, and they're going to do it again with, they killed their own podcasting app, and now people are saying YouTube is the savior of podcasting. Will they distribute your podcast through their music app? It doesn't even make sense, but people are just like, oh, it's the thing that's working. And we've seen this with WordPress time and time again, where it's just like, oh, Webflow will be better, closed source will be better, this page builder will be better, and the core of WordPress still lives, because it's very difficult to stomp out the bug that is open source, right? And people who are contributing to it, no matter the issues that we have doing it and creating WordPress. I mean, open source and freely distributable software, just like audio, will win, because it's just it's open by nature and everyone has access to it. I was listening to the All In podcast, Jason Calacanis and his rich friends.
I just cannot. I used to listen to that. I have a very diverse. I listen to other people's point of views and that, but I just cannot listen to that anymore.
Yeah. I don't listen. I used to listen to Enjoyment when they were like first figuring things out and like trying to figure out how to be a podcaster. And now I just listen to it from, let me just get their take on like a particular thing, and I just jump from chapter to chapter. But they were talking about AI and stuff like that recently. It might not even AI, but Chamath brought up a point where these big organizations, if you're not the they were talking about Facebook releasing Llama AI open source, and they were saying like, well, look, if you can't catch up to your competitor in the VC world, then you go open source. Which is like hilarious to just hear that from like billionaires and trillion-dollar companies. Like, okay, so we can't win, so let's just open source it. Like, no shit. Like, it should have been open source to begin with. And it just goes to show that open source can win because of the distribution. So all of that is to say, I am optimistic about WordPress. I think we're getting, with better block-based themes like rock-based, like Ollie, like, a host of others coming out. We are at that bottom of that roller coaster ride where everyone was like, this is terrible. This sucks. It's going down, man. Like, I don't want to do this anymore. And now I think we're going to be going back up in the next 6 months to a year, not only in the software, but back into the services business. We'll talk about like Access Ally and stuff like that, but I also think that we'll see an increase in the services business again, largely as the economic stuff maybe cools off. But I think we're going to see a resurgence in that space, because what will happen is people will say, I love this WordPress thing. It's much better now. I'm going to go back to it. And now people are going to look for folks to service. And I think the whole thing is going to swing to the more positive side at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think in general, I'm very supportive of WordPress. It's how I make my living. I want the best for it. Like you, I'm not prepared, because I listened to a couple of your recent conversations, and editorial independence is quite important to me, and I'm just not prepared to get into the mindful area where I'm just a propagandist. And I don't think you're prepared to go there either. And this kind of mind control in the WordPress space is quite prevalent, and I push against it quite vividly, and I think you do that as well. I think you're very like me to some extent. You're more diplomatic, but you're prepared to tolerate a diverse spread of different views. Without blocking people and all that crap, but that's there. But I think it's very where WordPress is going. I think some people are struggling, other people are finding opportunities. I think that it's all over the place. But you could say that from the start of this winding road, it's always been a bit of a Wild West kind of scenario, isn't it?
There's like when I started the Matt Report years and years ago, one of the questions I had back then, Envato was in the news right today. Shutterstock purchased them or acquired them, whatever. And I remember back in the day when I started my podcast, one of the questions I would ask all of my guests is, what do you think about the $500 website? Because back then we saw the dawn of Envato, Theme Forest, all that stuff. People cobbling together sites for very low dollars, selling them very cheaply, and then leaving the scene like a crime scene, never to help that customer again. And as an agency owner,
slipping into the night.
And as an agency owner, that was the biggest threat. Now today's biggest threat is AI. These page builders are getting better. AI generated websites, big hosts like WordPresscom offering their services. And the same discussion is back into play, like what's going to happen with like the services industry and freelancers and such. But I'll tell you, no matter what, the year 2024, I'm part of a nonprofit that I'm helping my friends start for my godson who passed away.
I thought that was mostly all WordPress agencies.
For what?
What, the non-profits?
Oh yeah, non-profits. Yeah. So I'm helping them get the site off the ground. I manage it, whatever. I'm the webmaster or whatever you want to call it, and I'm helping other folks like post blogs and send newsletters. It's the year 2024. My friends, they're great. They're fairly intelligent, and some of them have actually been in the marketing space. They don't even know how to upload an image to WordPress. Right. And then when they do get the image up, it's like 300 pixels by 300 pixels, or it's the inverse. It's 6.5 megabytes and it's 8,000. People don't even understand the fundamentals of the web. Like we don't have to worry too much about AI because standard operating practices that people need to know to even engage with AI and to do things on the web are still so far behind that there's plenty of opportunity.
It just changes. But, in the early days when I got into web design around 1998, the advantage then for about until, let's say, 2010, 2012, just getting a website up and functioning gave you a business advantage.
Right.
Now, you can get the website up. Will you get traffic to it? Will it convert? Will it produce anything? Will it encourage the potential customer to ring up? That's a totally different ball game then, so it's just the goalposts have just changed, haven't they? Over to you, Kurt.
Well, hearing about optimism and goalposts and all that stuff, it has been really interesting for me to see that, kind of off of what Matt said. I think the optimism for me personally is the quality of customer that's coming to the agency market seems to be much higher and better funded and more open to a solution that you would propose. Whereas if you're going for the bottom feeder market for the $1,000, $1,200 website, you're just dealing in a nightmare quagmire of nonsense. Mm-hmm. But there's a whole market out there. Once you do the work and you put in the time and you kind of, tread water and get above that nonsense, there's a whole market out there that seems really great. And I think that's where some of my optimism's coming from.
Yeah. If you're a services agent, Kurt, you probably know this better than anybody. You adjust accordingly, right? And this is literally still not that much different a decade ago than it is today. But, these tools, the better they get, you get, and it's been a decade plus, right, of the web, and people should have caught on a while ago. They're getting smarter, they're getting more educated, and that's good. But those who are onboarding, now you shift to maybe a different service. You have an onboarding product, a training product, a strictly purely consulting service that you're not doing the work, you're just educating them. Yeah, it's lower fees, but it's more margin for you. They're happier, everyone's happier. And I think that that's a space that was underserved for a while, but you can come back with it now. Like, don't be afraid of Elementor or Bricks or whatever. Invite it in, educate your potential customer. When they realize, holy crap, I can't do this myself, they'll come and work with you. So, I just, again, just reiterating, I'm optimistic, at least on the services side of things.
No, I love that. A parallel for me would be when I was the training manager at Ducati, we had a thing we called Panigale Labs, and a Panigale is a really fancy motorcycle. But what we would do is we would take an engine to a dealership on a weekend and have an event where we would literally take that engine apart in the showroom and let everybody attend, all the customers and everything. We take a whole engine apart, and you're passing around the crank and the cam and the lifters and all, lifters, the valves. Yeah, I'm talking cars and motorcycles now, but we'd pass this stuff around. And people would be, ooh, ah. And people would say, Kurt, oh my God, you're giving away the secrets. You're telling everybody how it's done. You're going to lose all your service business. And what actually happened was people said, oh my God, now that I know what's really involved with that, I'd rather just pay a pro to do it. Yeah. And a lot of my business at Mañana No Mas is really educating the client, like you said. But to jump to the next question, talking about services and WordPress development versus more like a product space, where do you personally see like the major growth opportunity areas? Where, especially like you're real active on X. I see you interacting with a lot of folks there too. So what are you getting from that?
Yeah, I think right now is a great time for, if you're thinking services, I think productized service will be back, right? It's, it got stale for a little bit, but I think it'll be back. Package services, having you as the person that your customers can rely on, groups of customers, having access to you for what you might have sold for, many X multiples before in the past. I think you can dial it down and go wider with those types of support services for customers. That's a thing. I think it's a great time to be WordPress content creator. There's plenty of opportunity. If you're thinking like, geez, should I start a YouTube channel? Yes, you should. Should I start a podcast? Yes, you should. If not just from the business side of content creation, from the Lux surface area that it builds for you, attention, awareness, etc. Mark Szymanski is really good, is doing really well with that and just getting his name out rather quickly. That's
Mark, I've been helping him out.
Yeah, and the theme space is back, baby. Like, I think if you're a designer and you're looking to invest in starting a new theme business, like Rafal, like Ollie, I think you can do really well with that, right? And of course, agency services still. I'm very optimistic with where WordPress is headed these days.
Nice. Hey, Jonathan, over to you.
Yeah, but it kind of bleeds into the next question. I think it's very diverse. The only thing I would say is it's tricky. It's tricky where people are going to go with the plugin model and where things, the theme model was very profitable and a lot of people piled into that. But then with the page builders, that has diminished a bit, and the whole thing with Gutenberg and that. But I think there's people, we're doing it at WP-Tonic, and Melissa Love, I think what she's doing with her photography crowd is quite interesting. She was big, still is big in Divi, but she's gone with Cadence, and we've gone with Cadence as well. But this whole business of WordPress as a service, that's a tricky one, because you had companies like Thrive Themes that were really big with Rob Rowling, and they were really more big in the world of Bootstrap SaaS, and they really didn't do a lot in the WordPress community, and that didn't exactly work out for them, and they sold to the chocolate factory. So let's go. So it's tricky, but I think this whole WordPress as a service thing is a bit more tricky. So before we go into where the spiciness will start. What do you they're craving for it? The people that have joined us, the spiciness. They're like children, aren't they, Matt?
Yeah.
Do you think this whole WordPress as a service, it kind of, I think it will come back, but people found it a little bit more trickier than I thought it was going to be.
I mean, I guess defining what tricky is, the hardest part of the business is to stand out, is to market, is to gather your customers. And I think hopefully by now, WordPress business owners have moved past, cheap prices, maybe not all of them, but maybe the consultant side, maybe not the plugins and themes of the world, but, elevating their prices to a more premium tier, respecting the work that they do, and charging well for it is something that I hope most freelancers and consultants have learned by now. And as long as they're doing that, as long as they have the conscience to do that, it's all about marketing, reaching customers, and that's the hard part. The business part should not be difficult. In fact, you should build the business around it so that it isn't so complicated and that there isn't so much moving parts. If I ever started just to give you an example, if I ever started a services business again, it would not be developing custom websites. Just wouldn't. Just way too many moving pieces, right? It would be, here's the type of site I build. It's this price. Here's when it will be done, in 1 week or whatever the number is, right? Or 2 weeks. This is the program we're on. We're not doing custom. We're not doing, because it's just way too many moving pieces.
I totally understand where you're coming from, but it never works out that simple, Matt.
I mean, maybe it's been 10 years since I've been in the services game. I feel like I could do it. But, that's just me.
Oh, it's doable, but there's a lot more. Because that's the contradiction of WordPress. You've got all these plugins. You've got these people that they are meddlers in the best context I can put it. It's so much more attractive to mess around with a new plugin or a new layout rather than the grind of actual marketing, which is just painful.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the customers that I serviced, the hundreds of customers that I've serviced when I was running the agency, would never touch WordPress. They were not installing plugins. And I'd go right after those customers again because so many people just don't want to touch it. And I think we get stuck in this vacuum of all of these crazy tools, Gutenberg, or the editor getting better, Elementor, Bricks, yada, yada. People go, oh my God, everybody's going to touch this. Everybody's going to want to touch it and use it and customize their site. And what am I going to, they don't touch it. The customers don't touch it. Or at least the customers that you should go after are going to be like, no, you do it. I don't want to touch this. And that's where I see the opportunity.
Right. Let's go into the spiciness then. So Natalie, the beloved Natalie, one of the smartest women in WordPress, really a star. She has decided to sell her beloved XSLE to Caseproof, the chocolate factory, as I classify it, and to Willy Wonka, as I call him, the Arthur Daly of WordPress. If you're not British, this
I thought
was
you said the affidavit of
no Arthur Daly. As an American, it will mean nothing to you. If you live in Britain, you'll be laughing now. You know exactly. So Willy Wonka, he's got his hands on this now. It's a bit sad that if you want to sell your WordPress business, a lot of the time it's Willy Wonka and his chocolate factory. I see that as a bit of a problem. Is that there doesn't? Why are there still so few choices about where you're going to sell your WordPress business to? Got any insights about that?
I think the answer is pretty obvious. I think the answer is the fact that he has the money to do it, and he's
got the Benjamins, has he?
Yeah, and they have the money, they have the team, They can close quickly. And I think all the stuff that, folks might say on Twitter, at the end of the day, there are so few opportunities like, awesome.
Yeah, but why is that, Matt? Because it's driving 40% of the freaking internet. And if you've got a reasonably good business, why do you have to sell to Willy Wonka all the time?
Because nobody else has a plugin business his size. That's that. Like, why? If it's only going to him, why isn't it going anywhere else? Because no one else is as profitable or has the capital that he has. So yeah, he's going to win all of those deals. Turn to a web host doesn't know what to do with plugins. Web hosts will, we've seen a handful of web hosts purchase plugins. Okay, they're doing somewhat successful stuff with it, but there's not like every web host has a stable of plugins, because it's hard, and web hosts should just focus on web hosting because that's where the real money is in this game. And there's not a lot of other plugin shops the size of Automotive with the capital and with the other thing that folks really want to. And I've never sold a plugin to Syed. I'm only going by what I know from what he talks about and what others have told me. Is all these other places it's going to be this long, arduous process. Yeah. And if you're somebody like Natalie, and you're like, man, I've put in a decade. It's
a bit like getting a sponsorship for a podcast. You get these characters; they want to know. They want to sponsor free shows, and they want you to give them all your figures and have about 5 meetings. And you think, oh, give me a break, mate. So if you're talking about a year's sponsorship, I might continue.
So if your only choice is going to somebody like Automotive, who will close a deal with you in 30 days. And you're a tired entrepreneur. You've done it for a decade plus. Why are you want to sell at the first place is, I'm tired. I'm done fighting this fight. I've literally hit a business plateau. I don't have the dollars to market and grow this business anymore. And I don't want to scale horizontally because there's just way too many more problems. Like, I don't want to add in services. I don't want to build another product. I don't want to do that again. I want to get out. So who do you turn to? You turn to Automotive that could close the deal in 30 days, probably in cash, and you can exit, knowing that it's going to somebody who is in the WordPress space, knows the WordPress community. I'm not talking about the brand sentiment he might have, but I'm saying knows the WordPress community. Or do you turn to some private equity firm who knows nothing about WordPress and is like, yeah, we'll give you 2x multiple on a plugin. Not even. We'll give you 1.5x multiple on this open source. Yeah.
Open source.
What is this? What is this? Right?
What is this?
Yeah. So no one else has that capital. He posted on LinkedIn yesterday.
Oh, he loves me, Willy Wonka. He loves me.
He posted on LinkedIn yesterday that he's looking to acquire 1 million ARR businesses in Canada. Because their capital gains taxes are going up, and he says he can move fast. I mean, hey man, like for as much stuff that he gets, he can move in this market faster.
Yeah, but why does that? But to me, it's just the graveyard of WordPress plugins, as far as I'm concerned. It's where you go to die slowly. It's just buy it, milk it. Keep it updated, do as little as possible with it, and just run with the money, basically.
Is it though? Because if it was, then he wouldn't have the capital to keep buying these businesses.
Well, he might have an uncle that we don't know about, right?
I mean, yeah, sure. Yes, he could.
A sugar daddy. You might have a sugar daddy,
he could have an uncle, but Optin Monster is a pretty big presence. Obviously, all of his plugins, who I compete with on a day-to-day basis at my day job, they have a great distribution model. But at the end of the day, he's profitable. He's at 400 plus employees.
Why isn't your boss? Why are your Gravity boss? And hey, will you ever come on my podcast, Matt? Do you think?
Yeah.
And secondly, why hasn't he gone out in the market and bought a few plugins?
He's invested stuff before. But it's just not part of. It's just not part of like. There's no system for. Again, Syed built a accelerator system, right? He has an accelerator. He has a whole investment arm. He built it to do what he's doing. You know, kudos to him. But look, why isn't anybody else doing it? Yeah, because nobody else either sees the opportunity or knows what the hell to do with
I think it's partly the open source thing, because if you try and talk to VCs or anybody, angel investors, and you say WordPress open source, their eyes just glaze over, don't they? Mm-hmm. You know, Rob Rowling, a friend of mine, he's invested. He was one of the investors in WP Engine. Mm-hmm. You know, done fabulous out of that investment, and he's invested in a few other. But in general, he doesn't like, because it's open source. Right. You know, it's. I think that's one of the key things, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. Distribution model, open source. A SaaS is you can control it. So when you look at something like the Shutterstock and Envato purchase, they doubled their based on the article that I read anyway. They doubled their total addressable user, right? So they went from 600,000 at Shutterstock to 1.2 million with the Envato. And that's like, it makes total sense. It's not going to be great, but from like a business perspective, they have stock photography and stock videos. People build that stuff out on websites, when you look at it just high level, and they're like, yeah, we just doubled our reach.
Yeah, I don't wish it, but they're another iffy enterprise, I
mean, 100%.
I don't like dealing with them because they've shafted me on a few times on, try and get a refund from them. You're better off talking to God.
Right.
Well, you have a better chance of talking to Jesus Christ than getting a refund from those gangsters.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying I agree with it. I'm not saying I agree with Automotive being.
People complain about my refund policy, and I thought, well, go over to them and try to get a refund out of them before anything. Good luck to you. Yeah. All right.
What more could you ask for?
But you can always ask. The answer's always no.
Right.
It's got nothing to do with us that this plugin doesn't do anything like it says it's to do.
Yeah.
We took out, but you need to go and have a discussion with that developer on your own. Yeah. That's their attitude. Lovely, isn't it? Mm-hmm. But there we go. They built a great business on that attitude, didn't they? Mm-hmm. That's my English sarcasm coming out in spades, isn't it, Matt? I think it's time for us to have a mid-break. Matt's getting a bit twitchy. It's getting a bit spicy. My English sarcasm. You haven't heard anything yet, folks. It's going to get worse in the second half.
It happens when the recording's off.
Yeah, right. We were going for our break, folks. We will be back in a few moments.
Tired of hosting providers that can't handle high traffic loads? Conversio is here to help. Our platform can handle any amount of traffic, all without slowing down or crashing. With immediate Slack support, performance optimization, and a team that thrives on resolving technical challenges, your e-commerce business is in safe hands. Learn more about Conversio at conversio.com.
I've enjoyed this. It's retribution episode. It's when I pay back some of the people that I really love in the WordPress space. There's some people in the WordPress space I really, really love, as much as they love me, folks. But before we go into the meat and potatoes, as I say, why don't you sign up for the WP-Tonic newsletter? I write a newsletter every week. I write it myself with links to the best WordPress stories, if there's any, or the tech stories. I always choose those that interest me, and I write a little commentary. What more could you ask for? My English sarcasm in your inbox every week. What more could you ask for? To get this rag, all you have to do is go over to wp-tonic.com/newsletter wp-tonic.com/newsletter. And I'm going to get more and more spicy in my newsletter. I'm up for it. I think it's time for payback on certain people in the WordPress space. I despise them with they despise me as well, and I don't care. Over to you, Kurt.
Oh, thanks, Jonathan.
As he pulls the pin out, hands you the grenade.
Well, Mark Szymanski commented that he wanted to see the spice, and here comes the spicy question of the episode. And that I'm going to try and word it as diplomatically as possible, which Jonathan says is a trait of mine. So I'm wondering what the long-term effect would be. And if we think of these things in a scope, I want to try and paint this. When I think of WordPress, I think of WordPress as open source, free. I get a hosting account. I download it. It's open. If I want to learn how to use it and sell that product to somebody else, I can do that. There was no shortcut to, internet fame or any of that stuff. Like the work had to happen. The meritocracy had to promote me up to where now people kind of know who I am a little bit, right? I just think of how that work happened. And then it seems like, and maybe it's just because it's the loudest voice in X that I'm seeing right now, but there's like a group of folks that are like extremely, very politically motivated in how they view WordPress and the WordPress community and how to get ahead and all these things. And I'm just wondering, is there a long-term negative or positive effect that comes from all that activity? Or how do we just get to focus on, the product and growing like we should, I think?
Help me define that a little bit more. Are these people criticizing more the community or criticizing more the product?
I think it's kind of a blend of the two. I mean, without throwing specific names or scenarios out there, but it's like saying like WordPress by its nature or by its community is just a group of white dudes, just a group of like for the speaker announcements. And this one really hit me with the last set of speaker announcements that came out for WordCamp Europe, because they were so happy of the diversity. And that's great. Everyone talks about diversity, but then they were upset that a couple people, or at least one person, had multiple talks. Well, how did this guy get the multiple talks? And it hit me like a ton of bricks. I'm like, he does the work. Like, he's everywhere. He's adding value to the community. Every time I turn on my computer, his face is on my screen. So of course he's got multiple talks. Like if you do the work and you put in the time and you network and you add value to so many people, those opportunities come. And so when I think of you mentioned Mark Szymanski, and he's in the chat right now. So that's a perfect example. It's like, where did this cat come from? He's doing the work. All of a sudden, everyone seems to know who he is.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's a tough question because there's interior WordPress issues and then there's exterior WordPress issues. The exteriors are like the competition. Is the software keeping up? Is the web trending towards like open standards, like all of this stuff? So like there's that discussion. And then that also like I would also include like the third-party plugin space as the exterior, because a lot of these plugins are saying, well, our feature set, like bricks, like why doesn't Gutenberg do, and we've talked about this at nauseum on this show, but like, why doesn't Gutenberg do all of these things that, say, Bricks does? Because it's not made for this type of user. And you're actually winning because you've got an open market and you've built a tool that serves this need. Why the hell do you want it in Core so bad, right? So stop bashing Core, continue on your march of printing money and make the money until you have to continue to compete against all these other players. So exterior and then the interior stuff. The interior stuff is super delicate, super hard to smooth over. And then there's so many pieces of that fabric, right? There's whatever. How do I become a core contributor to actually write code against WordPress? Diversification across those teams, diversification across speakers, automatic versus open contributors. Like, who are these people? Why does Automatic have so many people contributing? Media core, marketing team shut down. How the hell could you even market WordPress to begin with people who are just donating their time? Now there's that team's gone, and now the media core.
How long do you think that's going to last?
Well, I think it's going to last. I mean, that'll be in play for a little while, but at the end of the day,
how many meetings do you think they had at Automatic before they came up with that idea?
A couple. I mean, I think at the end of the day, it depends on how you want to look at this, right? You have to decide: do I want to be all in with open source, or does that not matter to me, and I just need this tool to get a job done? If you want to be all in open source, you have to remember that, like, that's the path you're going down. I will fight for open source, just like I fight for RSS for podcasting. Like, I don't want Spotify and YouTube to win, because what you're doing is you're crushing open distribution that I could distribute freely, available anywhere on the web. You have to think of it like the same way with WordPress is. You have to be diplomatic, and you have to approach it with, is this thing that I'm battling about good or bad for open source, right? It's a very simplistic way of looking at it. The stuff about diversity, inclusion, who's getting what, that's the overhead that comes with this open system. The thing is there are no talks, and this is controlled by a commercial company. So we have to deal with these things. It will never be easy, because it's humans dealing with humans in a place that has no one's invested in it, like the marketing team. You can't have this data. You can't have this. You can't have that. Well, what the hell are we doing here as a marketing team? It's going to be difficult. That doesn't answer your question, but it's super hard on the interior stuff of WordPress.
Yeah, I think you really put that well. It's a real witch's brew of discontent. It's like Richard II. It's a real, like I say, witch's brew. And some of the criticism, like around Gutenberg, around like Kevin's tribe. I know a few people that are really in with him, and they really hate Gutenberg with a passion. There's something about it they just don't like, and I was talking to a really hardcore developer, and I mentioned Gutenberg, and his face just dropped. He hates the whole thing. I just don't have that emotional problem with it. When it comes to the accessibility and equality herd, as I call them, obviously accessibility is really important. It's something with Gutenberg that's declined, and the code and the great leaders focus around the mechanics of accessibility. It's been a minor. He keeps saying it's something in his consciousness. Well, I don't think it is been treated with a lot of importance. And equality, who's not a reasonable person wouldn't agree with more equality. It's like it's like a person that doesn't like YouTube videos of kittens and puppies. Who doesn't? But what struck me about this crowd in general is that they pronounce they're all about accessibility and equality, but their tools of trade are blocking, slurs, blocking, banning. These are their tools of trade. It's a bit of a contradiction that you're supposed to be about accessibility and equality, but your tools of trade are blocking, cancellation, slurs. It's a bit of a contradiction, isn't it, Matt?
What tools are blocking this stuff?
Well, blocking other people, blocking people they don't like.
I see. Like they're manually blocking, not like.
well, blocking you off, Twitter, they'll cancel, and a cancellation culture, which they seem to love so much, don't they?
Yeah, it's a hard question for me to answer because I'm not sure, exactly like who or how that would affect somebody's, like if it were you, like if you were getting blocked by somebody.
They cancelled me. I had the misfortune of crossing swords with them about a year and a half ago, and they started gunning for me, and it was a bit difficult because I was recovering from prostate cancer at the time, where like most things, when people kind of shit just piles in all at once, doesn't it? So I was dealing with trying to get a webinar up and running. I was dealing with my prostate cancer, and this crowd starts gunning for me.
Yeah.
And they really are bores. They are really people of very little humor.
Well, I would say that the advantage that number one, the advantage that open source and WordPress gives you is you can still use the product. You can still run your business. You can still do what you want to do. You can still partake in the open source nature of WordPress. Second is you've built your own, whatever you want to call it, community tribe. So if you were coming to me and saying, Matt, I don't know what these people, like, what do you want? What should I do about all these people? I'd say, you just move on, Jonathan. you move on and you continue with your thing. It depends on if you wanted to either reconcile something with them, work something out, or be part of whatever it is they are part of, as that third tier that that you should engage with. So I would move on, from that, because you have your advantage is you're still running a business, you're still partaking in WordPress, and you have your own sort of megaphone, if you will. I think there's like a lot of this stuff is human issues. I don't know about where you guys live, cities, towns, whatever, but there's like a cleanup day coming up for, in the spring. It's always in the city that I live in. It's like, hey, everybody get outside and, of course, like clean up around your house and, clean the streets, and everybody kind of partakes in like picking up trash or whatever, just making the place cleaner, right? But if you look at it from that perspective, there are people in the world that just look out their window and go, this place is a dump, it should be cleaned up, and they do nothing. And then there's the type of people who engage on that one day, and they all get out and they hold hands and everybody cleans up, and okay, everybody came together, we helped clean up. And then that's one set of people. And then there are the people who are out there every day, cleaning up, solving the world's trash problems. Right? It's just, there's just different layers to how people want to engage in the WordPress world. Sadly, we hear a lot from the people who are just looking out the window complaining about things, and doing nothing to help themselves or the rest of the community. And then we don't really hear a lot from the people who are doing the hard nitty gritty work, like writing the code and writing docs and help docs and answering questions on the community forums, helping people at WordCamps. Those are the unsung heroes that you don't hear about. So it's just a multi-tiered.
Well, it's tricky, isn't it? Brew. It's a witch's brew, isn't it? It really is, isn't it? Because like these discussions about page builders and that, it's a page builder, for God's sake. But they can get really ugly quick, can't they?
Yeah, I mean, I don't go. God forbid you ever go into like a Facebook group because it's just. I mean, man, one person asks a question, it's just the pile dive of keyboard warriors, and I sit there, and that's like the stuff that I just like. I feel bad for humanity because these people, I'm just like, how do you people live? How do you people build websites for other people? Like, you're a good service provider is what you're telling me. Like, your attitude towards this person that asked a simple, honest question, and you're out there building, you're building websites. Like, people come to you, say, hey, I need to build a website, and you're nice to them. I don't know how you run a sustainable business. But
I think you touched a bit with a recent discussion you had online with Mark around if you go into certain Facebook groups and you actually try and promote something or say something, they just block you straight away, won't you? It's if you're in the WordPress, it's supposed to be a more collaborative environment, but that seems not to play true, does it?
Listen, you guys know this too. Everyone watching this knows this. Developers are a crazy bunch, right? Like, I've always sat in the middle of like the C-suite team and the developers, because I could understand what the developers were saying. I could understand what the C-suite team wanted. And I was like that level of communication, right? Sales engineer is kind of technically what I was at like Pagely. I could speak developer and sysadmin, but I could also sell a contract to a customer. And man, like largely WordPress attention content is developer focused, right? Here's how you do things in JavaScript to make a block, right? And it's all still developer focused. And developers have their ways. So, it's just amplified when it gets to social. That's the wrong way to do it. You're a fool if you do it that way. You're not tab spacing your style sheet. What's wrong with you? You're still making a style sheet? What's wrong with you? Like, it's just, that's the nature of the developer crowd. And that's just anecdotal, but that's some of the stuff that we're up against.
Yeah, but before we go on to the next question, do you think the situation, this witch's brew, do you think it's got worse over the past couple of years?
No, I think it's exactly the same as it was 10 years ago.
Right.
There might be more people, but I think it's the exact. That's why I've come down to looking at things more positively, because it's like, oh, I've seen this before. Yeah. I've seen this 4 times actually. And whenever anyone's saying fire, guess what? Nothing happens. It is, the same thing. I said this the last time I was on the show. People are like, oh, everything that they're doing for, Five for the Future and committing back to WordPress is just going up the chain to WordPress.com. I'm using WordPress.com. It's no better than what we have in freely distributed WordPress. It's the same thing. There's nothing better up there. So they're not doing it. And they have the same problems we have, which I said last time. So I think, to me, same problems, different year. Maybe more people, but same exact issues.
Well, yeah. Over to you, Kurt, again.
Well, I guess the next question would be, and you've kind of mentioned it, but AI. I mean, at one point we're like, is AI going to steal our jobs?
As a guest of the show, I'm in the ring sparring with Jonathan. He's left, right, and then I go, all right, there's the 2 minutes. I go back to the corner and getting sprayed with water, and that's Kurt. All right, Kurt, go ahead.
Well, it's a pleasure to be on the show today.
No, I enjoy this moment. Like, I get a breather.
It's just, for me, we're always asking everybody where they feel AI is going to be in the next 18 months. But like, are they really going to come out with, instant website builders and all this nonsense? Or is there still a place for people to put hands on a keyboard and build something unique?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I use AI regularly, right? Analyzing transcripts, helping me draft ideas, but it's largely like the 5, maybe 10% of the final outcome was thanks to AI. Because really, at the end of the day, all it does is get me from staring at a blank screen to jogging my brain to get into writing. It doesn't write the whole thing for me. It doesn't do all the work for me. Helps me summarize like transcripts and stuff like that. On the AI web design front, we just saw WordPress or Automatic. I don't know if it's from WordPress.com or from Automatic, like where it's branded, but they have the new AI tool coming, right? Elementor has Elementor Copilot, I believe it's called. It's supposed to get better, faster, learn what you want to do, etc. There's a bunch of other ones. And I've been so unimpressed by AI tools that for me anyway, I want to just see professionally designed page layouts, patterns, complete themes, and go, that's the one I want. It gets me 95% of the way there. I'll take it the rest of the way. If I'm sitting there interacting with a prompt, which I do with my ChatGPT, I only use ChatGPT to create featured images with DALL-E. And it's a freaking nightmare. If you don't like the first one, the whole experience goes downhill. It gets progressively worse as you interact with the prompt to make these images. I don't see it being any better than what a professional would build, design for me, and let me pick. And if they don't have the thing I'm looking for, I go to another professional designer or theme that has what I'm looking for. And maybe that's where patterns wins for us all, in the future. And maybe that's also what separates the good designers and a good product from run-of-the-mill AI, right? Where you'll pay a premium to have a human designer in the future, maybe 2 or 3 times what we're paying now to have a human designer, because everybody else is just slapping together AI-generated content. One of the things that drives me nuts, especially with AI-generated images, is that there's so many people, especially in the podcasting space, again, where I have a foot in, that write blog posts, and the featured image, they all look the same. It's all what somebody says is a user sitting at their computer thinking about this, and this. And ChatGPT creates the same image for everything.
What gets me going is these YouTube thumbnails that have images that got nothing to do with the video.
Right.
Got nothing.
Right.
Nothing to do with the video at all.
Yeah. So what I'm getting at is you can spot these images from a mile away. I mean, of course, there's there's stuff that's pretty amazing, but still that relies on the human to make it pretty amazing. And the AI-generated websites, again, I just feel like you're going to spend more time cleaning up the mess that it makes than you are if you would have just clicked on a pre-designed template. That was what you wanted to begin with. So I don't know. I'm the old curmudgeon on the AI-driven stuff.
I use quite a lot of it, and it's made a big difference to me. I have a suite of tools in my marketing process, and they've made a big difference to my productivity. But in general, I agree with a lot of your insights. It's also well overblown in some ways. The amount of money that's been thrown at it, though, is mind-blowing, isn't it? It's just. Well, on to the next question. So if you had your own time machine, Matt, like H.G. Wells or the TARDIS from Doctor Who.
We're getting to the end of the show. Here we go.
Yeah. I thought it could go longer, but I think it's been pretty stressful for you. So I think we better not stretch it out too much because you're going to need. If you had your own time machine and you could go back and give yourself some mentorship or just a quick bit of insight or anything that you feel you like to tell yourself that you could share with the audience, that would have, you just wish you'd known a few years ago, like not coming on this podcast too regularly. What would you tell yourself?
Hands down, I wouldn't have started a WordPress news business. That's exactly the advice I'd give myself. I'd focus on, training and education, like I was with the YouTube channel. I still do with the YouTube channel. That's the market. At least from a content creator's perspective. That's the market to focus on. Again, right now, I think plenty of opportunity still to train, educate, onboard people into WordPress. And I certainly would have gone that route. At least with my own content creation, if I could hop back into that time machine.
Right. Have you got 5-10 minutes for some bonus content, or do you want to be off?
Of course I do.
All right. We're going to, my co-host had to leave. He had to do duty with the Lifter LMS crowd. But we're going to finish out the podcast part of the show. So, Matt, what's the best way for people to find out more about you and what you're up to?
So the podcast I do for Gravity Forms, gravityforms.com/breakdown. If you're a Gravity Forms user and you want to go behind the scenes in the Gravity Forms universe, go to gravityforms.com/breakdown. And if you want to follow weekly 5 minutes of WordPress news, go to thewpminute.com.
Yeah, and we're going to do some bonus content, folks, which you'll be able to watch the whole interview and the bonus on the WP-Tonic YouTube channel. We're going to, in the bonus content, we'll probably have a discussion about podcasting because both me and Matt are passionate about it, about YouTube and about marketing WordPress in general. You'll if you want to support the show, please share the podcast on your social media platforms. It really does help the show. And we'll be back next week with another great interview. I've rustled up some great people like Mac to come on the show in May. I'm always amazed how I get people to agree to come on this. And it should be a great discussion. We will be back next week, folks. Bye. So I listened to you last, we covered it when you were gracious in having me on your show about podcasting, about sponsorship and that. And I listened to, and I've listened to some other people talk about podcasting. Where do you think podcasting has gone wrong, or it was just the expectation? Because obviously Spotify put a ton of money into it. I think they're backing off. And you worked for a podcasting WordPress platform and then you moved to Gravity Forms. So you got intimate insights about. To me, podcast. They say radio's declining. What radio stations? But what happened in my eyes, what's happened is radio's morphed into podcasting to some extent. So just like traditional television is morphed into Hulu or other platforms. It's just morphed. It's, but where do you see podcasting in 2024?
Yeah. So I think, so I also write about podcasting at thepodcastsetup.com. And I just wrote a piece about YouTube not being the savior of podcasting that everyone thinks it is. And the industry is at an interesting crossroads, right? There's only a few big media. So why has audio podcasting been hyped for the last 8 to 10 years in the media landscape, and why aren't there any major innovations happening? It's been hyped because there's been a lot of media players. Platforms like Apple, Spotify, YouTube, Google, Facebook lasted about 3 months in podcasting. Literally 3 months. They announced that they were going to start supporting podcasts, and then they killed it. So we keep seeing this hype cycle come when the new major player comes in to go, oh, we're going to do something big with podcasting. Amazon showed up for a little bit. They left. You have all of these players coming and going, and when they make a splash, the media covers them, et cetera, et cetera. There's still a lot of money there because advertisers realize that podcasts work for trust and reach and listenership for ads and stuff like that. The problem is it's all built on the top of a house of cards, right? Podcasting and the YouTube thing is popular because what's happening is the money is saying, hey, we need more celebrity podcasts. Or comedian podcasts or sports talk show podcasts. So what they do is they go into, like you said, they go into the old school media, film, television, radio, and they pull out these B-list celebrities, and then they create a podcast for them, right? And all of that money that their sponsor deals, ad deals, all of this stuff is all inflated because that's the way it is in, say, Hollywood. It's all inflated. So the market is getting this injection of podcasts going to YouTube from all these B-list celebrities that people are trying to make money off of. Pod News, which is a news site that covers podcasting, does a phenomenal job. They did an interview with a company that was selling podcast download clicks by installing a free mobile game, right? And the idea was, get this game for free, but before you get this game for free, you listen to this podcast. And the podcast would get this increase of listenership. And they interviewed them, like the company behind. This is a media campaign. Like, this is a thing that exists. This isn't like Black Hat, this is what happens. And they just said people want, these companies that are buying these ad spots, they just want clicks.
I heard a whisper. I don't know if you get it. I get people DM me, and you're most welcome to do, listeners and viewers. If you've got any juicy stuff, just DM me. But I get people DMing me with little snippets. I heard a particular podcast in the WordPress space that if you work with Automatic, you are told to download it, Matt. Yeah, I heard a little whisper.
Yeah.
Have you heard that whisper, Matt?
I haven't heard that whisper, no.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, it's an industry right now that is, again, seeing a bunch of excitement because of the YouTube thing. It's largely driven from these ad buys because they can't figure out how to make it work in open source, right? So they need something to track. They're trying to force ways to get the typical media juggernaut on a freely distributable, just like we talk about. Why aren't people buying these plugin companies? They're so valuable. They make so much money because people look at it and go, it's open source. I can't do anything with that. And they say the same thing about podcasting. They go, can't do anything with that. So Spotify tried.
Yeah, they threw billions, didn't they?
Tons of money into podcasting. When they signed Joe Rogan, that was like the biggest, it still is the biggest podcast. And whether you like the podcast or not, it's the biggest podcast in the world. And it's a beacon of what's happening with podcasting. They bought it, they closed it down, and Spotify still couldn't make money. It's not until they made all the 3,000, 4,000 cuts that they just did, where they just posted profitability for the first, or major profitability for the first time in their history this past quarter. But what did they just do with Joe Rogan? They put it back onto open RSS. So now he's freely distributable everywhere. Why? Because he couldn't figure out how to make money closed source. And what they realized was, you know what? It's better for our ad deals if they open it up.
It'd be exactly, but I don't understand why it isn't that surprising. If you utilize that model with YouTube, you made it the same model as Spotify tried, it would soon decline quite rapidly, wouldn't it?
Right, 100%. But these big companies, it's just, the money is just unimaginable. Spotify is tiny compared to an Apple, YouTube, Google, of course. Like, this is nothing. Both of those companies could buy them probably 50 times over without even noticing it on their spreadsheets. And when you see Spotify, they did Spotify was trying to do a whole campaign about how that they are the podcast industry. This goes back a couple of years ago, where it's like, oh, we do this for podcasts. We do it. No, you don't. It's all closed. There's nothing open about it. You bought Anchor, which was a free RSS podcast host, and then you did what typical companies do is after a couple of years, you just swooped it into Spotify, and that Anchor doesn't exist anymore. So they tried to do what every other major media platform does is buy it, own it, and if you want access to it, you show up to our platform. It's a typical closed web mentality, and that's the issue.
Now, another thing, is it just me, or is it, it mostly comes with some of the larger plugin shops, but also a lot of the hosting providers, they're trying to up their game in podcasting and YouTube videos. Is it me, or is it a lot of their stuff is a total fucking yawn fest? Is it me, or is it really just a fucking yawn fest?
Well, you have to, there's a lot of variables there, right? The bigger the company, the harder it's going to be to get, really, really good content, or you just have to have a champion inside the company that is like, hey, I'm going to do.
Is it the contradiction? They want eyeballs, but you got to be a little bit edgy, but they don't want, for understandable reasons, they don't want the baggage of edginess.
You don't have to be edgy. You just have to be a human. And people want to connect with a personality, whether it's edgy or fun or educational or comedic. And most brands won't take that challenge. Here's a perfect example. My old employer, they hired me as the face of the company because nobody else could do it, wanted to do it, had the ability to, be out there and connecting with the audio industry. And if you look back in the splash that I was making back then, we were in the Pod News newsletter consistently. We were in the discussions on the open standards projects, which is like open source WordPress. We were in the discussion. That was my job. I was getting myself out there. And then when I left, all of that just fell off a cliff because there's nobody else there doing it. There's nobody else out there taking the risk, having the conversations. And when you look at WordPress companies that try to do YouTube, it's fine. You can make YouTube videos, and YouTube is the largest search engine when you're looking to how to do something with WordPress. So it's fine. You have this baseline of videos. One might consider it boring, but if you're a customer or a potential customer, that's very useful to you. So you consume it and it's valuable. It's when those product companies go, this isn't working. Like the numbers aren't going up. Subscribers aren't subscribing. No one's commenting. That's when you have to say you're not making engaging content, and people try to force it. The thing I've been getting hit a lot with lately from other WordPress companies is, hey, I won't name names. We have a problem with our brand, right? I know it, you know it, everybody knows it. Can you make a video about our product and talk about it in a certain way so that people can see it differently? And that's when
they don't want you to say that you've been sponsored, do they?
Right. And that's when I say I'm shutting the laptop because I'm not having this discussion. I've had people continuously come to me and say, oh, can you do it this way? Can you do that? No. If you're going to do it if you want me to make a sponsored video, it's X price. I make the video. Maybe you can tell me what you want me to focus on. Like if it's a feature, fine. Like you want
that's
me to
just
focus,
courtesy, isn't it?
Like
I'll
focus on these features, especially if it's a big plugin. You got a bunch of things happening. Fine, but I won't make a video with the intention to persuade somebody. I'm not persuading anyone. That's on you. I will show somebody how to use it, let them make their own decision. Or clearly, if I know,
I think somebody that's found the balance does a pretty good job is Paul from WP-Tonic, doesn't he? He kind of takes the sponsors, but he makes it really clear. I think he understands the game he's playing.
Right.
I think he does a reasonable job, and he covers things, and he makes it really clear that they've sponsored this. But no, it's a craze. The other thing is, it's a bit difficult because I'm a kind of quasi-service, quasi-boutique hosting provider in my little niche of community and membership websites on WordPress. So it's hard. Conversio sponsors the podcast, but I've got a long-term. Tom's been a really great guy, and his prices are a bit higher. He goes for the enterprise because you understand that because you with Paisley, you were involved with them for many years, weren't you? That higher game. But I can't really take. I really can't take hosting providers as sponsors normally because I'm a boutique hosting company myself, my little niche, but they're crazy buggers, aren't they? They the money's rolling in, but they don't really want us to sponsor anything long term, really either. A lot of them do.
It's the particular challenge of this, WordPress space. Like, where is the tavern? Where are the writers for
that's
the tavern?
sad, isn't it? What's happening to it, isn't it?
Who do you rely on, to get the news? And I wish I could say it's just me or just you or a collection of us. But the challenge is if I for the news side, I'm just trying to monetize the news. You have a service. I don't have anything associated. I don't have a service. I don't have a product. I just try to sell sponsorship for the stuff that we do. Yeah. And I can't get enough sponsorship, one, to do it full time, and two, to pay a writer full time to cover the news. So it's a particular challenge.
It's a shame, but it's just the reality, isn't
right?
it?
It's just the reality of this. I've said it a zillion times.
No, I'm a bit saying because I think Jason, I think Jason would be okay to say I'm a personal friend now because he's been on the show a few, Conrad folks, the founder of WP Engine. And I think Jason's one of the brightest guys that I know. And he's very generous. You know, he's spent a little bit of time, and he don't have to because he's hugely wealthy. He's done really well with WP Engine. And I think they're a pretty good crowd, aren't they? Brian and, but they don't they just try and build it in-house mostly, don't they? They haven't thrown the money out at all either, have they?
I think they just recently shut down Torque magazine though, right? Which was their media arm.
That didn't exactly work for some reason, did it?
Yeah. Well, it's different. Yeah, it's different. Like, again, I was just about to say this. I've said it a million times. For the WordPress news, for the stuff that you and I are talking about largely, the max audience is 10,000 English-speaking people across the world. For the stuff that you and I talk about, for the inside baseball of WordPress, community, news, 10,000.
That's nothing, really, is it?
And that's nothing.
But it's highly influenced.
But it's highly influenced, highly trusted content. If you look at what works, which you all know, but we've talked about it before, WP Beginner, that type of content has the hundreds of thousands of eyeballs, right? And you see it with the YouTube creators, some of those that range between 100 to 500,000 subscribers, like you see that. But then that eventually caps out because then you have to start talking about freelancers and then you start talking about accounting software. Like if you really want to start growing, the channel, and then you become a generalist. So it's just the content game, man. And, I'm looking, not that you asked, but I'm looking forward to like hitting a reset button soon and just being able to find an avenue of, if I'm going to continue to do this, it's got to make some sustainable money or I'm just done.
If he had, I'm not asking, but if Matt had come to, I'm not even saying that you would have taken the job, but if he had came to you with a I think this whole Hunger Game thing where you got these groups, I thought, give me a break, Matt. But if he came to you with a serious budget and a serious salary and a serious plan of action, would you have been tempted?
It would have had to been like super.
Yeah,
it'd have to be a big payday.
Yeah, because you got to deal with the madness, haven't you?
Yeah. It would have to be.
But in general, but it's tricky anyway with something like the tavern because you got to produce stuff that's interesting, but on the other hand, you don't want it descending into a shitfest, do you? Right. A really ugly. And there's been certain newsletters, and you could say, and I had a discussion about my woes a little bit, but I think I've admitted I had some part of that. But it's really quite easy to push it too far. It's finding the happy medium, isn't it? And that's difficult, isn't it?
Yeah, especially with WordPress, especially with a legacy of a comment system on the tavern, which started to clean up over the last few years when it was active. But man, years ago, it was just
it was brutal. Wasn't it?
Brutal. It was brutal, right? And it's unfortunate, that it goes away. But it also is a sign to show you, like, ain't nobody caring about this WordPress news stuff. Because if somebody cared, if there was a big enough audience, you would have seen it, running. It wouldn't have just fizzled out. It'll be back, and a year ago I was like, oh shit, like this guy dumps in, the money that he has or he can put into WP Tavern, that could be a serious like news outlet, and the WP Minute would kind of just get dwarfed. Now I'm just like, oh god, it's just whatever, because he doesn't care, and a lot of other people don't. But anyway, it's just.
Well, he's probably got. You can't blame him. He's probably got mixed feelings about it, hasn't it? Because
I just think it's not even on his radar of priority.
Nah. All right, I think we're going to end this bonus content. Thank you for coming on the show. It's always great to have a discussion with you. I think we always cover some great stuff. I dig a grave. You're diplomatic. You dodge it with ease. I keep digging. I'm up to the digging though, but it was a great discussion.
Do you think we lost Kurt with my boxing analogy?
No, he had to go off to do his lifter stuff with Chris. Chris is a friend. I've got many friends in the WordPress space. I've got people that don't like me, and I wish them well. I don't really. I take the mickey out of Willy Wonka, but he's got the money. He's busy counting the money, isn't he? So why does he? I doubt if he cares if I call him Willy Wonka. If you've got as many Benjamins as he's got, why would you care? Little shit like me calls him Willy Wonka. We will be back next week with another great show. See you soon, folks. Bye.